You are listening to Mind Over Me, the mental wellness podcast with me, Scott Carter. I am a licensed therapist and someone who is very mindful and aware of the decline in our collective mental health. I created this podcast so that we could have more direct and honest conversations about difficult topics and difficult issues. It's my goal to have honest but direct conversations that we need to have that are necessary. It's also my goal to give my listeners the information that they need in order to find their own mental health and mental wellness. This is where you will find the information that you need to be your own healer. And of course, all of this is based on years of clinical experience and expertise. Thank you for being here. Let's dive right in. The other day, I came across a TikTok video where some dude, older guy, older than me even, I don't know who he was. No idea if what his background is, what his profession is, what his expertise is in. And he stated, first sentence out of his mouth in this video was, ADHD is one of the most painful things that a person has to live with. Um, that's pretty bold claim, and okay, maybe it is really super painful to live with. Other than borderline personality disorder, for example, it's not more painful than, or narcissistic personality disorder, not more painful than that. Complex PTSD, definitely not more painful than that. Maybe he hasn't heard of those other things, or maybe he's never heard of paranoid schizophrenia. Maybe he's never heard of anorexia or bulimia. Maybe he's never heard of self-harming disorders. Maybe he's never heard of that. I mean, other than those things, right? ADHD is the most painful thing you can live with. I mean, except for also maybe like heroin addiction or a meth addiction or alcoholism. And of course, with those things also comes with alcohol, like alcohol withdrawal. It's not more painful than alcohol withdrawal or heroin withdrawal. Definitely not more painful than that. Or withdrawal from benzodiazepines. Definitely not more painful than that either. And I mean, um, like those are just the ones I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, if you want me to crack open the DSM and dive into that, I will. But yeah, I mean, when I hear that, I just like, I don't know who this guy is, but he clearly has no idea what he's talking about. Nobody should listen to this guy regarding anything. I mean, that's my honest feeling. But what it did do is it motivated me to do an entirely separate episode about ADHD because this diagnosis has a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems with it. And I think it's time that somebody like me, I have an extensive background working with teenagers, 25 years. I've been working with teenagers for 25 years now. And I've seen this specific diagnosis just spring up and spike in the last 15 to 20 years. And frankly, this diagnosis has just, I mean, we've ran roughshod. We've gone rampant. It's just this whole diagnosis. There's so many problems. There's so many issues with this diagnosis. If you're listening to this episode, there's a good chance that you have, in some form or another, diagnosed yourself, or maybe someone else has diagnosed you with ADHD. It's a ridiculously common diagnosis now. It's become a frontline diagnosis. A lot of people, especially kids, are being diagnosed only with ADHD when there could be a number of other things going on. I've even seen grown-ass individuals well into their adulthood who clearly meet the criteria for, like, let's say, borderline personality disorder and are only given an ADHD diagnosis. And just as a side note, I should probably do a whole other episode. Yeah, I should probably do a whole other episode on borderline personality disorder. That is a whole other can of worms right there. I should probably do an episode on narcissistic personality disorder as well, now that I think about it. But in this episode, I'm going to pick apart ADHD. I'm going to point out all the issues that I have with it. I'm going to point out all the questions I have about it, the unanswered questions that I have about it. There are so many problems with this diagnosis. So many problems, in fact, that it's extremely difficult for me to know where to start. And it's such an emotionally loaded topic as well for me that like it gets me a little fired up because I think it's wielded irresponsibly by teachers, therapists, psychologists, doctors, etc. To me, a diagnosis should never be applied unless it helps the individual. And more so, it seems like 9 times out of 10, the diagnosis is applied to help a teacher who doesn't want to deal with a child who has extra energy. From my perspective, the diagnosis comes with a certain stigma that a lot of other diagnoses do not have. People with this diagnosis or who have been given this diagnosis are typically or often viewed as a problem. They're labeled as a problem. They're labeled as an issue. It's a diagnosis that is often applied when a teacher doesn't want to deal with a certain student. And so maybe that's a good place to start, is talk about school, education system, teachers, right, and how this diagnosis is applied. So I personally believe that this diagnosis would just maybe even be a fringe diagnosis if it weren't for the education system, if it wasn't for schools. We have a certain education system that has a certain standard and certain expectations. A lot of children don't fit in that box. And a lot of times I've seen kids being labeled with this diagnosis simply because they don't fit in a certain box. Or maybe more specifically, they don't stay in a desk quietly as a teacher would like, or for a prolonged period of time that the teacher would like. And just in case I did not provide an adequate disclaimer, I will probably end up saying maybe some nasty things about other mental health professionals that I might regret later. But again, this topic, it just gets me fired up. What the mental health system allows to do to children, allows the education system sometimes to do to children, um, it's appalling. It's unacceptable. I mean, if you're new to my content, I am a therapist. I've worked in this field, social services, mental health, etc., for 25 years now. And I have some very, very strong opinions just about how we do things these days. The mental health system has really lost its way. It's gone down a whole bunch of roads that I just cannot follow. I mean, really, it's gone from a very noble profession to one that I can't, I have a hard time taking seriously anymore. And often, frankly, I'm just embarrassed to have my name attached to it sometimes. So, I mean, I guess maybe it's like part of my goal behind doing a podcast is like, I don't know, try to bring what I feel like is maybe, I don't know, a scrap of sanity to all of this. So there you go. There's your disclaimer. I'm probably going to say some unsavory things about mental health professionals, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, etc. So with that unpleasantness out of the way, where was I? Yes, school, teachers, and education. So I'm in the camp that kids who teachers dislike dealing with are far more likely to be given an ADHD diagnosis. I believe that kids are having substantially greater behavior problems these days for various reasons. Let's be honest, it's either technology driven or parent driven or a little of both. So a lot of these kids are having much greater behavior problems. And frankly, teachers, they're either good at managing a classroom or they're not, right? It's a skill that can't be taught. You either have it or you don't. That's just been my experience. At the risk of sounding arrogant, again, I've worked with teenagers for 25 years. I just have it. I'm not trying to sound arrogant. I'm one of the people that has it. And don't get me wrong, I love teachers. When I was growing up, I had some incredible teachers, amazing teachers. Um, there were a few dickheads. Mr. Clement, PE teacher, junior high. Sorry. God, what an asshole. Seriously. What? If you're out there, Mr. Clement, what was your problem, dude? However, the best teacher I ever had, Mr. Andrus, fourth grade, incredible, incredible, incredible teacher. I loved Mr. Andrus. That man made a huge, huge impact in my life. He just left his stamp in a positive way in my life, as well as many other good teachers. Mrs. Garrett, Mrs. Holt, love you guys, wherever you are. Hope you're well. Teaching truly is a noble profession, but just like therapy, it seems to be losing ground to a group of psychopaths. I'm just being honest. A lot of good teachers, man, they are leaving the profession. They're out of there. They're gonzo. Like, as much as they love kids, as much as they love teaching, and as good as they are at it, it's just not worth it to them anymore. I don't blame them. I don't blame them for leaving. But now what we have are schools that are like, they're getting rid of interactive school, interactive type of education. They're getting rid of PE classes. I saw, I think it was yesterday, where they're talking about a certain state, I don't remember which one, phasing out PE for elementary school kids, which is complete madness. You know what that means? A whole hell of a lot more kids that are going to be diagnosed with ADHD. Any psychologist, therapist, mental health professional worth their salt knows that kids learn by playing, they grow by playing and interacting. This is good for their psychological development, their physical development. But unfortunately, we can't depend on them to advocate for children anymore. I mean, the APA, for God's sake, should be saying something. The American Psychological Association ought to be speaking up and be like, hey, the APA does not support these measures. And of course, they're dead silent, just further proving how useless they are. But again, how many slanderous comments am I allowed against other mental health professionals am I going to give myself today? Try to keep it under 10. No promises. Anyway, so what we have now are a whole bunch of teachers who are labeling kids with ADHD. And I've encountered these teachers, and they're like, well, I've been running a classroom, and I know what ADHD looks like. And I'm like, you can't tell the difference between ADHD, anxiety, or some sort of PTSD. Some of these kids come from very, very distressing homes, and some of them are checking out. Some of them dissociate. At the very least, they're very anxious, right? You don't know their home situation entirely, right? A lot of kids come from very distressing homes. They're going to be anxious. They're going to have trauma. And those things are going to look exactly like ADHD. ADHD is also a diagnosis that is disproportionately diagnosed in boys compared to girls. Anyone who knows my content knows that I'm a strong advocate for men's issues and for boys and masculinity in general. And it's true, statistically, boys are disproportionately diagnosed with ADHD and put on medication. I've even encountered people who think that this is unfair towards girls, and I'm like, I'm just proving that we have lost our minds because being diagnosed with ADHD and being put on harsh drugs does not always give you any sort of benefit or advantages. I will concede that there are some out there who get benefits. To me, they're the exception rather than the rule. But in cases like this, where boys are disproportionately diagnosed with ADHD, again, a lot of them are acting out because they don't have proper parenting. Okay. A lot of them are acting out because they're overstimulated. A lot of them are acting out because they're not given healthy outlets. Boys move and do and run and play generally more than girls do when they're growing up. A lot of these modern teachers are looking at normal boy behavior and seeing it as a pathology when they're normal behaviors in boys. And there's actually a small group of mental health professionals, doctors too, who are pretty vocal about this. There's one guy on X that I follow. I don't remember his name. He's a psychologist, and he is extremely vocal about this. He says that ADHD is a complete bullshit diagnosis. And actually, if you look into it, there's a fair amount of people, professionals, who say that ADHD is 100% bullshit. Now, I'm not entirely convinced that it's 100% bullshit, but I think a lot of it is. I think too much of it is exaggerated. I think the education system has forced ADHD to be a frontline diagnosis when something like anxiety or trauma or PTSD is much more fitting. In many cases, kids who are diagnosed with ADHD have not been screened for anxiety. They have not been screened for trauma. And again, I'm a practicing clinician, and I'm not. Should I mention again? I've been doing this for 20. No, I've already done that. I've encountered many teenagers where they go, "Oh, I think I have ADHD," and I go, "Okay, well, let's look into it." And I screen them for anxiety and give them an anxiety screener, and I ask them specific anxiety related questions, and it becomes staggeringly apparent that clearly this child is anxious or has social anxiety, including social anxiety is just one type, right? And I'm like, well, you clearly have anxiety. So let's treat the anxiety and see if your quote unquote ADHD symptoms improve. And wouldn't you fucking know it? You treat a lot of these kids for anxiety and their quote unquote ADHD symptoms improve. Unfortunately, school personnel are not interested, for the most part, in getting the kid an accurate diagnosis. You get a lot of teachers, school counselors, even school personnel who think that they know better. They work with kids day in and day out, so they understand mental health diagnosing. As a side note, if you're a parent and you have kids, do not let the school tell you that your kid has ADHD and that they need to be put on drugs. All right, so moving on from the whole school issue here, okay. Let's let's go into the mental health profession. I'm not going to bash therapists. I'm not going to bash therapists. I will refrain from calling them names. I will, however, offer significant criticisms. ADHD is the only thing that therapists diagnose children with anymore. It seems like no matter what is going on with a kiddo, a therapist is only diagnosing ADHD. There could be a clear and obvious presence of emotional abuse, which is a very, very, very real thing, very significant thing. And of course, the therapist is just diagnosing the child with ADHD. ADHD seems to be a great diagnosis if you want to give the parents a free pass on any accountability. The child might be nervous or anxious or traumatized, or developing some sort of OCD, for example, because the parents are a nightmare. And instead of holding the parents accountable, we blame the child by giving them an ADHD diagnosis. That happens all the time. There aren't enough parents anymore that are willing to be held accountable when they should be held accountable. Too many therapists allow the parent to just blame the child and skip out on any of their own accountability. And so, again, when it comes to children, it seems like the only thing that most therapists, most psychologists diagnose kids with anymore is ADHD, with a sprinkling of autism in there because the kid is struggling with their social skills. Don't even get, no, no, don't get me started. I'm not doing that one. Okay, I'll just say this. Well, just one thing, okay? Kids have bad social skills because of technology. They have bad social skills because they've been raised by an iPad. Okay? Not because they have autism. Okay, they might. Yes, I know some of them might. I realize that doesn't include all of them. But okay, but like struggling with social skills does not autism make, okay? It's a lot more complicated than that. You need more than eggs and milk to make a cake. Oh God, I just remembered too. Like there's this other quote unquote diagnosis that keeps popping up: sensory processing disorder. I've been seeing more kids being quote unquote diagnosed by this, usually boys. So I tried to find the diagnostic criteria for SPD. It does not exist. It's a fake diagnosis. There is no diagnostic criteria in the DSM nor the ICD. It's crazy that we just how fanatical we are about labeling normal childhood development as pathology. It's absolutely wild. Of course, therapists don't take issue with this. They're perfectly fine. Um, it's like you go through college and then you go through grad school and you take all these developmental classes and they tell you that this is normal development for children, and then you turn around and I can't with these people. Moving on, the primary treatment. Sorry, I can't help it. Tangent. The primary treatment for ADHD is drugs. Um, so, virtually every other mental health diagnosis has some form of applied therapy or clinical techniques. ADHD is pretty much the only exception. Really, the only treatment for ADHD is drugs. So, if you're keeping track, everybody has it now. By the way, everybody has some form of ADHD now. I'll get back to that point in a second. And really, the primary treatment mode is just pharmaceutical medication that you're expected to take until the day you die. Anybody else see an issue with this? I know a lot of people do. Okay, so back to the point that, well, it seems like everybody's being diagnosed with this. We all have some form of it or another. If everybody has it, then nobody has it, you would think. But nobody's having the conversation, or very few people are having the conversation that ADHD could be chalked up to an overstimulated brain due to technology, right? The constant scrolling, the constant stimulus, the constant dopamine hits. Those things are conditioning or molding or shaping the brain in ways that are not healthy. So, like, virtually nobody in the mental health community is like blowing the whistle. Is that what we're saying these days? Is a whistleblower? Here's where they should be blowing the whistle. They should be making the obvious correlation between an overstimulated brain and the rise in ADHD. And we ought to be pushing and stating that children under a certain age should not be given smartphones. No, 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 nope. That notion is absurd, of course. We should just give drugs. We should just give children drugs. Rather than doing certain exercises or doing certain things to maybe help retrain the brain a little bit better. Nope, nope, that would cut into profits. So keep staring at your phone and take your drugs. I've also noticed that there's the stigma, as I mentioned before, with ADHD, is that people with this diagnosis are, as a rule, more so treated as though they have some sort of disability. Unlike other disorders, people with ADHD are often given the impression that they can't change, they can't improve, they can't grow, or that they're incapable, or that they are unable to accomplish or succeed in life because of it. It's not entirely uncommon to see kids and hear people say, "Well, I'm unable to do those things in life like normal people because I have ADHD." I think that's completely insane. I think that's crazy. I think it's madness. I think it's criminal to treat children as though they will never, ever get anywhere in life or accomplish anything meaningful because they have ADHD. I think that's criminal. In my line of work, I see people that overcome like significant addictions. I've even known some people that have overcome personality disorders. People who have overcome eating disorders or really significant trauma to go on and do really amazing things with their lives. So any notion that people with ADHD are incapable of changing, growing, succeeding, accomplishing, etc., compared to maybe some of these other populations is completely absurd. I'm sick and tired of certain people talking about ADHD like it's some sort of disability. It's not. That's ridiculous. Certain people just use it as an excuse. Frankly, they just use it as an excuse. Sorry, not sorry. I know that that's an unpopular opinion. I've seen many other people overcome much more significant issues and still do fine. The ADHD diagnosis comes along with this stigma that your brain, compared to other brains, is permanently defective and that you are a defect. I'm tired of young people feeling like they have been permanently rendered incapable because they've been given a label of ADHD. And one of the last things I'm going to mention here, because I'm going to wrap this up here, um, there is like a subcategory of therapists that are like, frankly, they're cultish about ADHD. Like, they're dogmatically cultish. It's weird. They expect you to to swallow the whole freaking pill without even asking any questions, pointing out any issues, or pointing out any discrepancies. They're incensed, pissed off. I can't believe you. I can't believe people question this. I mean, especially if they say they have ADHD. Oh my God, you would think that you insulted their mother. Like, I'm over here, like, I'm just trying to ask some questions. Some of this shit is not adding up. Well, I have it. I have ADHD, so I would know. Ugh. I can't believe I have to work with these with these people. I mean, look, then address the concerns. Provide a logical argument. I'll change my mind if you provide me a logical argument and the supporting evidence. But if you're just gonna have an emotional meltdown, but that's just how it goes these days. For those of us who are just trying to make sense, who are just trying to use our logic here. So I'm going to wrap this up with maybe a few suggestions for those of you who have been given this painful diagnosis, this terribly, terribly painful diagnosis. Maybe you're not flawed. Maybe you're not defective. Maybe you have a superpower. Maybe fitting it, or I mean, not fitting into the box is a good thing. So if you've been labeled with ADHD and you feel a need for excessive movement, I mean, outside of like school or certain jobs, what's wrong with that? If you have a job where you have to sit still and it drives you crazy, then maybe find a job that requires more movement. Maybe you could direct all of that extra energy into something useful, productive, creative, even. Instead of seeing it as a disability, maybe see it as a gift, or maybe a superpower, as I've already mentioned. Seriously, if you feel like you have ADHD and you feel like you can't stop moving, what's wrong with moving? Like, if you have a lot of free time, get moving, do stuff, do something creative, build something, do something with your hands, interact, create, build, whatever. Those are good things. The school system has unfortunately like just absolutely put it into our minds that if we're not just sitting still quietly and paying close attention all of the time, that we're somehow defective or flawed. The fact of the matter is that we need people to do stuff with their hands and work and build and do and build, right? And I said build like 20 times. Those things are good things. I'd also like to suggest for a lot of you that may have been given this diagnosis that maybe reflect a little bit about what your childhood was like. Was there a lot of trauma? If you like, I mean, speaking from personal experience here, or professional experience, I mean, have a client who was given the label and the diagnosis of ADHD as a child, but he came from a home with some serious domestic violence. He still has PTSD. But a lot of these school personnel, they don't know their elbow from their asshole, and they're just gonna blanket. I mean, everything, every behavior issue is ADHD for them. So maybe take a closer look, right, at your childhood. How were you raised? What was your home like? Were your parents there for you? Were they not there for you? Were you raised by an iPad or a smartphone? And okay, I'm going to finish with a extremely unpopular opinion. Um, You could probably train your brain to be better. Yes, it would be hard. Doing hard things is good for you. As I always close my episodes with, you must do hard things. There's a reason for that. Hard things are good for you. Doing hard things is going to help you grow, help you change, help you improve. You're going to find meaning in that. You're going to find purpose and identity in those things. Those are very good things. Meditation has done wonders for me. I had a full blown anxiety disorder even before I was an adult. I mean, full blown anxiety disorder. I won't get into that. I mean, childhood stuff, childhood trauma. Uh, I grew up in a home with some domestic violence in it. And meditation did wonders for my anxiety. Wonders. I still do it to this day. I mean, I've been meditating pretty religiously for nearly 6 years now. And it does wonders. It does wonders for my brain. Helps me slow my thoughts down, helps me concentrate, helps me detach from my crazy thoughts. I seriously, meditation has done wonders for my mental health. It's been a miracle. And I refuse to believe that meditation would not help ADHD. I refuse to believe that. I'm quite certain that it would. Yes, it would be hard. I mean, like I have these imaginary arguments in my head because when I talk to clients, I go, "Oh, that's hard though." When, how are we going to get it back into people's heads that you must do hard things? Doing hard things is good for you. Anyways, I'm going to close this up. If you're accustomed to listening to my podcast, thank you. Appreciate you. I'm glad you're here. I usually do shadow work journal prompts, but there's not going to be any for this specific episode. Maybe just like a reflective exercise. I kind of already give you one thing about your childhood. Have you been labeled ADHD? Do you wonder if you have ADHD? What are your thoughts on it, right? Maybe just consider some other factors. So, anyways, I'm going to wrap this up. I got other shit to do, man. But thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. I hope this is helpful in some way. Thanks for listening to my partially unhinged rants about how crazy our system is. Don't forget to follow, guys. I'm going to put my website in the description below. Remember, you must do hard things. See ya.